And we're on. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever the case may be in this bright, wonderful world we call home. It is the Aloha Hour once again. I am your humble servant, Mike S. Miller. And once again, the clean shaven, still silver haired fox, Edwin Boyett.
That's what's different. Something was weird. I couldn't put my finger on it. You're right. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. The beard is temporarily left the building, but as always, even beardless, it is beautiful to be with you once more.
And our special guest tonight, you may know him as Professor Geek. We know him as the other Mike, Michael Kreitzer.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Good to meet you, man. First time.
Yeah. First time. Slowly moving up in the world.
Well, man, you've got more subs than I do, so you're doing something right.
Oh, I don't know. I've been at it for a long time. I mean, 3 or 4 years, perhaps. I think. In fact, I was monetized before they took the monetization away, and then I had to requalify for review. So,
oh,
yeah,
really?
I've been doing it a while. Yeah.
How'd that work?
Well, they suddenly decided that anybody who wasn't up to 1,000 subscribers and a certain amount of view hours, the usual qualifications now.
Yeah.
If you weren't that, they took it away. So, yeah.
Wow, that's jacked up.
Yeah, still waiting for that review.
Oh, really? How long ago was this?
2 months or so. And they haven't rejected me. They just haven't reviewed me yet. So still waiting in the queue.
Wow, that's messed up. Holy cow! Hold on, let me. Since somebody stole the iPad, so I can't use my iPad for the chat.
And some of your videos,
I'm telling you,
some of your videos have quite a few views, like 50,000, 30,000.
Yeah, I got lucky with a lot of the controversy about the Thundercats and the She-Ra and all of that videos coming out. That really did it for me. So
very nice, very nice. So you started how long ago? You said
2, 3 years, something like that.
And what motivated you to get started on YouTube?
Oh man, well, so I am a college professor. I do actually teach at university, and I actually
so
study
you're one of the
superheroes.
people that's rotting our children's brains.
Is it under, is it what do you teach? Is it underwater feminist basket weaving, or is it something more than this?
Yes, we keep it very gender fluid, and
Fantastic. That's what we like here.
No, I'm definitely one of the rarities there, and I teach literature and mythology and whatnot. But yeah, that's my focus is modern day mythology. And I look at superheroes and comic books as very much a modern day mythology. So I like to look at literary analysis of them, but also just how they affect our culture and our individual psychologies. And that's my interest, that hero's journey kind of idea, Jung and Campbell and stuff.
Okay, so now here's something fun. Have you ever followed Mitch Breitweiser at all?
Yes, I love Mitch. Yeah, I'm a backer of Red Rooster.
Okay, yeah. So when I've interviewed him a couple of times, I call them classical archetypes or fundamental archetypes, but he always refers to them as Jungian archetypes. So you're familiar with this?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Very good. So in the struggle here, are we the classical hero, or are we the trickster? What is Comicsgate? What is the archetypal Comicsgater?
I think Comicsgate is absolutely the classic hero. And I was just thinking earlier today, if you notice how many Indiegogo campaigns, original comic books from Comicsgaters have to do with monsters. I mean, Mike, yours alone, we're fighting monsters, and Ethan's even, it's a frog. It's not a monster, but still it's this monstrous kind of idea. And John Malin, reappropriating these monsters as heroes. And I think we've been called monsters so often in the public, as we still are. Yeah, Jawbreakers. That's right. Yeah.
I know.
And,
I noticed that correlation as well. It's funny. I'm feeling like Jawbreakers and the. Now the funny thing is about Lone Star is that it's really more about Lone Star than it is about the Unknown Soldiers. But it was funny because I wrote the Unknown Soldiers. I don't even remember, a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now I infusing them into my vampire story, it ended up being so much like Jawbreakers. I'm like, this is going to be weird. It's like everyone's doing the same teams and the same.
Well, hang on. Let's examine something real quick because the first book out the door was Jawbreakers,
Yeah.
right? And so he's repurposed and brought back. It's kind of like a retrograde movement, taking us back to a better era. But the name itself, Jawbreakers, right? It's something that's meant to catch your attention, be offensive, and so forth, right?
I always thought of it as like the candy.
Oh, well, there's that too. But
It's like, am I a big kid? That just pops right into my mind. That's the first thing I think of.
But I think there's this manifestation of where all these people are at. So then you had Ethan Van Sciver, right? And he's been dealing with these SJWs. And who's the villain of his book? Is these alien wasps. But they're not using some advanced technology. They're just kind of interstellar kind of parasites that just somehow manage to get from place to place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making
Just like an
delicious
SG
honey.
insectile swarmers, just like SJW, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And parasiting on the people around them for their existence. So you got a metaphor there.
Absolutely.
Mitch Brightweiser, you probably don't know much about the script, and I don't want to spoil anything.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this character there, the unseen villain, who kind of wants to completely deconstruct the hero's existence,
Oh wow.
identity. I mean, not just defeat him, but deconstruct his existence, his identity. That's kind of what Mitch Brightweiser was dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
John Malin, you brought out the heroes. The villains become heroes. Essentially, the monsters become heroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that certainly matches, like, and I know it's an older story, but it's tapping into something that's happening now. Do you know much about Lone Star Squadron?
I don't, just what I've known from the advertisements and what Mike shared publicly. I'm a backer of that too. Looking forward to receiving it. But yeah, I don't know a lot about the details and everything.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what that might be. What might be revealing to us about himself or about his condition in the world, his existence through Lone Star Squadron. What do you think?
Well, he is
what do you think you've revealed, Mike?
I don't know. I don't know how to formulate that exactly. I don't know. Come back to me on that one.
Well, Lone Star is part of a team, but has conflict with the team. And he has a primary mission, right? He has a primary mission to combat the unnatural enemies of mankind for his country. But he also has his personal mission, which he manifests.
His drive.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
So there's a separation. So that might be telling us something too. Be interesting to see and then Nasser's Stardust is obviously an autobiography. Nasser is obviously an alien. And he's going to kill you all in your sleep.
It'll be a lot of fun when these start to ship out and be able to do some analysis and reviews of them online and everything. So.
That'll be your shtick.
Ray Thulu says he revealed that working at Benihana's is a chore. That's what Mike Miller has revealed. Let me say one more thing because it was a germane part, and then I will let our guest talk and remain silent. Christ Energetic says, "Love this combo, guys. Please keep it super clean tonight. My son really looks up to Professor Geek and Uncle Mike. He's going to be listening to this."
Oh, wow. That's great. Appreciate that.
We do our best to keep it super clean every night.
Yep.
Yeah.
I share your
no
spirituality.
Front walls, no back walls. Oh, right on.
Yeah, Cecil, man.
Cecil.
Oh,
Don't
boy.
ever let him on the Aloha Hour.
That's a pretty good Cecil.
That would be a mistake.
He has me cracking up though.
Yeah. No, I love that guy, man. If he could promise to keep it clean, I would totally have him on the Aloha Hour. Except he's usually drunk by this time of night, so it might be hard for him.
Very true.
Got to get him in the morning.
Yeah. But You know something about Cecil though? He is a moral dude. He is a moral dude. It's a strange kind of morality, but like Cecil never really hits out at other people all that much if you think about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's
You
true.
know?
I've been on
Just
some of
that
his chats and
masochist.
tweeting to him.
Yeah, yeah. He's very.
Yeah.
I don't know. If Cecil couldn't swear, he'd wither and die.
Yeah, sometimes you meet people like that.
Yeah. So, cool. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm a professor. I'm a lifelong geek, and I this is my area of expertise. And I've written one book on it called Heroic Inspirations, which is a book about drawing inspiration from different hero stories to applying it to your real life, dramas and I'm working on a second book that's a little bit more of a exploration of the actual sub-archetypes. That's one of the things I look into are the sub-archetypes of superheroes. Edwin mentioned the trickster, and I've done a few videos on different ones like the frontiersman and the war hero and stuff. That's
And
part of my classes that I teach as well. So
the Greek mythology.
yeah, definitely derived from that and everything. So people seem to like it on the channel, so that's good. So yeah, just reading comics and well, trying to read comics. A lot of the creators are making it hard to enjoy them anymore. Looking
Yeah.
forward to these.
Reading the same trade paperbacks from 30 years ago over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's exactly. Yeah, and that's helping a lot. But it really is. We were talking about the hero's journey, and there's this prevailing idea these days that the hero's journey is just this trite formula that we need to expand and grow beyond. And that's something that we just need to, get away from. And that's, why we get a lot of these stories that ignore basic fundamental archetypes that have been here with us throughout. And I don't think people realize that the hero's journey is not a tired formula. That's our basic human experience.
Do you
That's
think
why we
do you think that even more so than trying to deconstruct like the Christian foundation of American culture, Western culture, it's more foundational than that. They're trying to deconstruct Western civilization writ large,
Mhm.
like going all the way back to the heroism of the Greek myths and whatnot. You find that's their overarching target?
Yeah, no, I do. I think it's, tear down the structure, tear down the status quo, and that's the big status quo now, and that's the big thing. We see that a lot with, for example, you were talking about Eastern versus Western. We'll see you can find a lot of people, how do I want to put this, very militantly pushing for, so let's say feminist causes, for example, in the West, but then being very, very silent about, say, the plight of women in the, certain countries in the Middle East or something like that,
Yeah.
because they're not the big bad Western, villain.
Yeah, is there's some sort of a mental disconnect there where they just can't see those women as victims or something,
Hmm.
or they just don't want to face it because it's not being done to them by straight white men.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not part of their boogeyman
Yeah,
ideology. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need the book. I've seen that in a lot of the Comicsgate tweets lately from creators recently coming out against Comicsgate. It's like they need a boogeyman. They can't deal with the world without this everything they want to call it, white Republican misogynist, whatever. They just need this boogeyman in their lives, this idea, or they're unable to function, it seems like.
Yes, this bizarre bigotry that the worst thing you can possibly be is a straight white male. It's like straight white males are responsible for uh, our entire culture and bringing more people out of poverty and destitution than any other singular racial group in the history of humankind.
Yeah.
Why are they so bad?
Well,
Why are
it's
you
like
so bad, Edwin?
Well, that would probably go on longer than this particular stream has time for.
uh,
But
oh,
there does seem to be this deconstruction of all roles, all archetypes, right? And
mhm.
so, like saying that femininity and masculinity, the feminine, the masculine, these are These are artificial constructs, right? They don't
Mhm.
mean anything. They don't mean. I think a lot. One of the reason, and maybe hate is a strong word, but no. Maybe hate is appropriate. Maybe it's a righteous hate. They seem to be trying to deconstruct the idea of heroism itself.
Mhm.
It's
Altruism and the reason to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah. All of these values and make everything kind of just all kind of nebulous. There's
Mhm.
no any absolutes, any universal absolutes. Lama Gigante. I'm not sure I accept beardless Edwin. I'm working on it. Doesn't
But that's it's true. The absolute. I mean, how much more basic of a concept of reality can you have outside of even um, the grays of morality from say one religion to another or one religion to no religion or anything? What other basic truth can there possibly be other than there are men and there are women,
Mhm.
and they attack even that?
Mhm. Yeah.
You just said something that struck with me, Edwin. That's there that it's an absolute destruction of the absolute.
Mhm.
and sometimes I think it's an extension of that cultural Marxism, that Marxist dialectic, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's
Right, Booker
this
T.
mind virus.
Booker T said I'm looking real jacked, so I gotta.
Booker T, you're always looking jack, baby.
We gotta get him on here someday.
But it's this mind virus, and the reason I call it a mind virus is because once people are affected or infected with it, they try and transmit it to other people. But it is almost like acquired insanity because it strips meaning from people and the ability to conceive of the value of these roles, the value of specific relationships, the ability to sustain anything. It seems like a calculated and constructed mind virus to literally deconstruct society by people infected by this particular mind virus, so that after all these crazy infected people have pulled down society around them, the people, I guess, savvy enough not to buy into the own nonsense that they're selling can come in and control what's left.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it ties in too to the idea that, people say, and it's true that the family is the basic building block of society. And if we can eliminate the ideas of masculine and feminine and the roles that they
Mother and father.
yeah, mother, father, the roles that they tend to play in a family, then that's part of it as well. And you look at mythology throughout, the history of mankind, and this idea that there's no difference between men and women whatsoever. They're fundamentally the same, and their mythology, their hero's journey should be the same. That's extremely new, and it's not something that's serving culture in the way that the iconic and traditional feminine and masculine have served culture. And it's not about uh, discriminating or labeling or trying to keep either side down or make sure they're uh, appealing and keeping within certain limits or anything. It's just about going with what works in the human experience and what works better for culture and psychology. But that's kind of vague. But yeah, just slowly prying it open.
Well, psychologically, I mean, would you consider it a an affliction? I mean, it's so outside of rational thought. It's so contrary to just basic norms of reality that I mean, Michael Savage is fond of saying liberalism is a mental disorder, and he says it flippantly, but my God, I think it's like it might actually be true.
Well, it is an ideology, and it is perpetrated by ideologues. Absolutely. I mean, you find somebody who believes, X, and they're most likely going to believe Y and Z as well, when
All
it comes
right.
to that kind of stuff. So, and that's an indication of people who haven't always thought X, Y, and Z fully through separately,
Yeah.
So,
The mind that alters alters all.
yeah, exactly. Nice.
Oh, this is interesting. Sorry, this is kind of a story that's just coming over.
Tell us, Edwin.
I don't know what Paste Magazine is.
I don't know. Better not be porn.
No, it's not porn. I just saw that Ethan had tweeted this. Can you see my screen?
Hmm?
Yeah, let me lock it on.
And sorry, I'm diverging from I'm diverging of the topic of the hour. But
I warned Michael that's what we do all the time.
I said we can be topic fluid tonight.
yeah, I've never heard of Paste Magazine before. I don't know what they're about, but it says Comicsgate won't be defeated by well-intentioned tweets alone.
None of those tweets are well intentioned.
This is a message, though. Let's see, August 27th. Main art by Darwin Cook. This is a message. Tradition of superhero comics, a recap page for readers who have missed out on the difficult to follow saga. Should I read any of this? Or
Yeah, do it.
over the last few years, a group of outspoken bigots, trolls, and opportunists
Oh my gosh.
have convened under the banner of Comicsgate or hashtag Comicsgate, a name inspired by the Gamergate harassment campaigns that continue to plague the video game community. The stated goal of Comicsgate is to make comics great again by harassing. The stated goal of Comicsgate is to make comics great again, ellipsis marks, harassing marginalized creators on YouTube and Twitter. And Mike, I am so sorry we harassed you last night. It was not my intent. It's unclear what Comicsgate pretends to think it's doing, but it engages in concern trolling to pass off as a genuine movement to improve the sales of mainstream monthly comics, which in Comicsgate eyes have been damaged by forced diversity and liberal politics. I'm going to go ahead and say for me, I actually want to break Marvel Comics. I don't really dance around that too much. DC, I'm kind of neutral to, but as currently constituted, I want to break Marvel Comics. I don't want to help their sales.
I must break you.
Yep. We're not going to waste time rebutting this. Well, I haven't made this point, or we haven't made this point, because you can't win an argument with someone arguing in bad faith. Because you can't win an argument with someone arguing in bad faith. So their idea of participating in a conversation is only to win. Any struggles the mainstream superhero comic industry may face can only be aided by diversifying the talent behind the books and the audience consuming them. To believe otherwise is ridiculous. Doubling down on a specific dwindling subset of consumers will only hasten the slide into irrelevancy. Comicscape's most visible personalities include a rabidly transphobic self-published creator who believes himself unfairly shut out of the mainstream industry and a former A-list superhero artist with a long history of online bullying and harassment. We're not going to name them here because they don't deserve the publicity and we don't deserve a legal headache. It's difficult to say that Comicsgate aligns perfectly with alt-right ideologies. It's difficult, but the group shares many of its trolling tactics and rhetorical devices with fringe conservatives. And one of Comicsgate's common complaints is that conservative, i.e., openly bigoted voices, aren't more prominent in mainstream comics. At least two outspoken, right-leaning creators with successful runs at Marvel and DC went on bigoted Twitter rants in the last year, cried censorship when they faced backlash, and parlayed the attention into successful crowdfunding initiatives. When angled the right way, it seems that being shut out of mainstream comics can be very lucrative for the men of Comicsgate. While Comicsgate biggest incidents have revolved around the big two of Marvel Comics and DC Comics, Comicsgate routinely harasses independent cartoonists of color, trans creators, queer critics, and anyone else in the comics community who doesn't conform to their view of who should be making, reading, and discussing comics. Okay, this is nonsense. And let me say this here.
Oh, yeah.
When somebody says some nonsense like this, if you are a person of good intent, it does not matter what your race is, it does not matter what your ethnicity, language, religion, gender, sex, sexual orientation. Come with us and let's make something better. Let's choose joy. Let's treat each other with as much kindness, respect, and compassion as possible. This is what Comicsgate is about: kindness, respect, and compassion. This didn't start with Comicsgate harassment of female Marvel employees drinking milkshakes, or even with Marvel writers Chelsea Kane's feminist agenda. This has been going on for years. Before the label Comicsgate stuck, marginalized creators, whether they publish independently or through Marvel and DC, rarely have any choice in engaging with Comicsgate. If the group catches wind of you, you can face everything from Twitter harassment to doxing and death threats.
Who
The
are these
stra-
marginalized creators?
the
These
straight
creators who are getting jobs at Marvel and DC. That's not marginalized. That's elevated.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is elevated. The straight cisgender and typically white men who still make up the majority of the mainstream comic industry, on the other hand, usually have the privilege to pick and choose when they address Comicsgate, and that brings us to this weekend's events. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize this article was this long.
It's all right. Hold on.
Okay.
Beer and pretzels 24 for $2. The Jordan Peterson effect.
Yeah.
Okay, so they recap the post by Grom Comics where he shared the Darwin Cook video. Less than a week ago, a Comicsgate affiliated account posted a video that proved in his eyes that late comic legend Darwin Cook would have supported Comicsgate. Marcia Cook, Darwin's widow, quickly and awesomely clarified that Darwin thought, "You Comicsgate idiots were a bunch of crybaby losers ruining comics. Anyone with an ounce of self awareness would have deleted their account in shame, but because we live in the most idiotic possible timeline, what ensued was a drawn out debate over whether or not a widow knows her deceased husband better than a bunch of random a-holes on Twitter." As with Chelsea Kane and Make Mine Milkshake before it, the attacks on Marcia Cook's character were finally enough to trigger reactions from a large number of mainstream comics. You know, Marcia Cook called you all racist, called you all KKK and Nazis. And so I kept encouraging people to disengage.
Yeah.
But she used some very hateful rhetoric.
Yeah.
From Jeff Lemire to Bill Sienkiewicz to Tom Taylor. Well, that's a gruesome threesome, whose condemnation of Comicsgate became something of a viral tweet. Fans, pros, and retailers copied and pasted Taylor's tweet word for word as a show of solidarity. Unfortunately, not all of Taylor's words were well chosen.
Hey, you know what that's called? That's called harassment. Adam Wright for $9.99. LS is codified in life tradition pre-Marxism entry in U.S. Now he fights. Lone Star fights foreign Russian vampires that both feed off and convert victims. Lone Star seems like Mike, serious deep inside, joyful, buoyant outside. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that.
Tell me if you want me to pause on any of this, okay? Or tell me.
I'll
if
just
you
interrupt you when I want you.
Yeah, here was the tweet from Tom Taylor. It said, "I believe comics are for everyone. There is no excuse for harassment." Well, then why do these professional comic creators keep doing it?
Well, what boggles my mind, and I freaking say it, and I mention it all the time, and tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet. These people don't understand the English language. Nothing that they're talking about is harassment. Harassment is an ongoing sort of persecution, going after somebody constantly. They think any mention of criticism, whether it's once or twice or 3 times, is harassment. That's not. It's ongoing.
No.
It's what non-famous does to me. That's harassment.
Well, it's also just absolutely no concept of the looking glass self here. I mean, they're sitting here saying Comicsgate are evil trolls and they harass, and then look at the language that they use to describe Comicsgate.
Yeah.
you can see it in their language. They're not. There's no integrity here.
Yeah.
That poor Comicsgate straw man is so beat up. If only they would actually interact with Comicsgate arguments instead of their straw man of it.
Yeah.
But
True.
All right.
Go on, Edwin.
In case you can't read the embedded tweet Taylor posted, I believe comics are for everyone. There is no excuse for harassment. There is no place for homophobia, transphobia, racism, or misogyny in comics criticism. You know,
In comics criticism.
I think
That's the
I think
funniest part.
you know what's so funny is this condescension and arrogance, because I'm starting to believe that Comicsgate may actually be more diverse than the rest of comics fandom.
Well, it's certainly more diverse than the rest of comics creators.
I mean, just given like the messages I get every day from people. But man, I hate when people have to say I'm XYZ ethnicity, so I'm not a racist.
Yeah.
This argument should be avoided. Like the charge of racism should always be declined, because they pull you into this framework, and you wind up tokenizing yourself to defend yourself. It's a horrible thing.
yeah, it's a distraction too. I did a video the other day called the ad hominem fallacy of SJWism. They're trying to stop you from making your argument and have you defend yourself instead. And that's what the personal attacks go. So yeah, it's a subtle, wicked little ploy.
Yeah. Uh, it's unambiguous in supporting marginalized identities. And this, again, over and over again, this is how leftists see anybody who's not a cisgender white male, or anybody who's not a cisgender white male is almost infantilized, or is inferior, or is at a disadvantage. It's kind of an evil worldview. Look, I mean, we get the reality that not everybody starts life from the same place, right? And depending on where you're born, your skin color, your race, or your ethnicity can definitely be a disadvantage. I mean, I think any reasonable person understands this, but just looking at people as marginalized, this is an evil worldview, because it dehumanizes people and it lowers them. You're like looking at somebody as beneath you, less than you.
Yeah.
And it is. Go ahead.
I was going to say it prescribes to people of different ethnicities or genders or whatever. It prescribes, okay, you're this, so this is how you need to act and this is how you need to think. And if you don't, well, then you're internalizing misogyny, or you're internalizing racism or whatever. You need to toe this line if you are this qualification or whatever. And yeah, that's insane.
There's this guy I've been talking to on Twitter all day. I've been watching him have this argument. He's a gay fan of mine, a minority. I don't know what kind of minority. He just mentioned it in his thing. And he literally had somebody who I couldn't read because I pretty much have all of the trolls muted. But I could tell this guy wanted like evidence that this fan was gay because he was siding with me. Therefore, somehow or another, that disqualifies him from being a homosexual. Apparently,
There's no membership card.
I know, right? And I'm like, dude, don't freaking kowtow to this bigot. And he's like, oh, I'm just having fun with him. Like, but that's how twisted they are. It's like all of you marginalized minority people should agree with us. Otherwise, there's something wrong with you, or you're lying about your minority status. It's like, no, it's like, dude, so it seems to me like at least 50% of the people involved in Comicsgate are minorities of one side or another, at least from like my Twitter experience, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm pretty sure there's more minorities in Comicsgate than there are in the average comic book reading world.
Yeah, and look at what's happening there. You've got a lot of white straight men, SJWs, coming in and saying, you marginalized people, you are put upon, and this is what you need to think about it, and this is how you need to react, and we're here to fight for you, but make sure you get in line. Isn't that like the ultimate racist? Isn't that the ultimate everything they want to talk about? It's
It's the helpful white male feminist to the rescue.
It's
The White Knighter.
Yeah.
it's the soft bigotry of low expectations.
All right, let's see. Let's continue. Where did I go? It's unambiguous in supporting marginalized identities, and it's fairly inclusive in addressing the most common forms of bigotry skate practices. In the final word of the tweet that set off a wave of responses, Comicsgate is not a venue for comics criticism. While it's true that prominent Comicsgate personalities review comics on YouTube, these reviews are often targeted attacks that focus more on the identities of comics creators than on the book's contents. Sometimes these reviews take the form of a Comicsgate affiliate stabbing a book he doesn't like with a knife that shall
Aw.
flash. This is not, it should have, if had to be said, criticism, and labeling it as such externalizes the problem. Comics criticism is thankless enough, even without dropping Comicsgate at the feet of under or unpaid critics who write about comics out of passion for the medium. But beyond any, I think that just told us something about the person who wrote the article, because it's towards the end of the article, and this person is thinking, I'm gonna get like 50 cents off this crappy thing, and I'm eating ramen again. Comics criticism is thankless enough without dropping Comicsgate at the feet of under or unpaid critics who write about comics out of passion for the medium. But beyond any wounded critic egos, labeling Comicsgate as criticism only serves to legitimize Comicsgate's claims and gives mainstream creators a certain comfortable distance in condemning their actions. If Comicsgate is a criticism problem, it stands to reason that there is less responsibility for creators to reckon with their ongoing role in the problem. Well, that got meta as heck. It's like constructing this artificial problem here, or this artificial construct here that nobody's actually thinking about in this context. Wow.
I'm confused.
You should be. That was word salad. Word salad. That's why you should.
Beer and pretzels 24 for $5. Once again, the Jordan Peterson paradox is what you put out in this world. I think world. Yes.
Are we all lobster? Are we all lobsters?
Jordan Peterson.
We're all lobsters in search of our little dish of butter, aren't we?
Yeah.
The loudest voices in Comicsgate are former Marvel and DC creators. Do we have any former DC creators in the house? Along with a self-published writer who is upset that DC and Marvel don't return his calls. That's got to be John De La Rose. I bet it is. While Taylor surely meant well and has since clarified his intent, another prominent Tom, Batman and Mr. Miracle writer Tom King, spoke out in even hazier terms. What did he say? He put an image of Batman here. This is the end, Batman. Every dang night, and yet I'm still here. All right, Tom.
What did he say? What was the tweet? Scroll up. Scroll back down.
Yeah, hang on. Let me
Scroll
reopen
sideways.
the tweet. Comics aren't for everyone. Created by the children of immigrants. Okay, by Americans. It is the medium of the outsider and the outcast, the nerd who won't fit in. We exist. Oh man, have you got like a bongo drum or something we could do like this? Hey,
everybody snap.
Can you dig it? Created by the children of immigrants, it's the medium of the outsider and the outcast, the nerd who won't fit in. We exist, we thrive because we recognize and amplify the voices of those who must struggle mightily to be heard. We say, I'm here, man.
That's so rude, I did.
So
What is this? What is this? More word salad.
Oh, wow. if you the more vague you can be, then the less opponents you'll have. That's a general rule with writing, and you see a lot of these. You see politicians do it, and a lot of these writers and creators are trying to do that mirror post so they can say, "Hey, I'm part of the club still, but I'm not gonna, antagonize any one individual." So it becomes more vague as it gets translated. Yeah.
Yeah, did you see that Bill Sienkiewicz today? Is it still going? Oh, it is still going. Well, let me take a pause here. Did you
Yeah.
see today Bill Sienkiewicz posted that he had that conversation with Ethan?
No.
Yeah. I
No,
was curious.
he said he'd been having a private DM with Ethan and that they can't see eye to eye. Um, so whatever. And I was just like, so how many of your decades long friends do you believe are hateful bigots now, Bill?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's what strikes me, and hopefully this isn't getting off topic or anything, but this misunderstanding of the Comicsgate agenda, our cause, our argument, this misunderstanding of it is that people always say, "Well, politics have always been in comics. You're so ignorant. How
Yeah.
could you say that?" It's not that. It's the problem that a mythology should not be an allegory. A mythology should be a recontextualization of our daily struggles. So you think it's something like the X-Men. They often bring up the X-Men as an example. The X-Men were not thinly veiled allegories for the civil rights movement. Professor X is not just supposed to be Martin Luther King, and Magneto is supposed to be Malcolm. No, they're inspired by these figures, and they speak to that struggle. They certainly put it in a recontextualization of mutants rather than a different race, and then we can see that, and the story can be about actual mutants coexisting with people of different races in the civil rights movement, and then we can understand the real life issue a little better. And so that's the idea. What they're doing now, what comics are doing now, is just putting the real life issues directly into the comics.
Yeah.
That's not a recontextualization. That's an agenda preaching. That's a platform.
And I also find it just hilarious to no end that every time they bring up the comics have always been political trope, they always bring up like the same 3 comics from the last 4 decades.
Yeah.
They're going to toss that Green Arrow.
Yeah.
They're going to toss that Green Arrow. They're probably going to
That's
toss out that Green Lantern one where like Hal Jordan walks away in shame because the wise black man has dropped some wisdom on him.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
And then what's the third one? Is the third one Superman like getting in front of like some immigrants sneaking across the border or something? Or
That was somewhat recent, I think.
Yeah. No, what was the third one?
is it Watchmen maybe? Or
Well, no, because that was allegory.
yeah.
I mean, you had like a lot of political stuff, so to speak, in like Dark Knight, but I mean, not really. It was just the place and time, and sort of the. It wasn't even the politics of the day because it was supposed to take place in the future, but
Mhm.
yeah, they just always bring up that's Green Arrow, Green. It's like the same 3 stories. It's like, so that's what you've got from the last 40 years. This is your proof that politics have always been in comics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's another example of ideologies or arguments that are just sort of filtered down through people, not really thought through by each individual spouting it. They're just kind of
Well, that's
taking the
because they're
talking
lemmings,
points.
man.
Mm.
I mean, don't mince words. They're freaking lemmings. They don't know what to think. They wait for their little Twitter overlords to tell them what to think, and then they just retweet it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
before the politics that got interjected into comic books was probably at least palatable to most people. You know what I mean? They could get it. They could get it. But now the politics that gets interjected into comics by default, because every writer and an editor, right? I mean, down to a person, unless someone is just deep cover at Marvel, is a political progressive or an outright leftist, right?
hmm hmm
And so you're gonna get progressivism poorly executed. So poor writing plus stupid politics interjected into every single issue. And people say, well, what are you talking about? They're not talking about, bonds or what country they're going to invade or civil rights, but the political is the personal to progressives and leftists.
hmm
So just the character's speech, the way they interact with people, it is all political to them all the time. Oh, and it's so boring and tedious.
Mhm.
Mm.
All right, let's get back to this article because it's
You
just
want
so
you want
much
more of it?
fun.
You're feeling that
Yeah.
masochistic. Okay. No way.
Well, a lot of these people don't want to read this drivel, so let's do it for them.
One click for all instead of a bunch of clicks.
That's right.
In a discussion about the harassment heaped on women, creators of color, and LGBTQ plus. You got to take a breath before you say that, man. LGBTQ plus individuals
Two-spirit.
valorizing the concept of the outsider nerd is not great. Not only is it disingenuous to pretend like superhero comics or an obscure passion in 2018, comics have inspired some of the highest grossing movies of all time. Comic adaptations have found success on a dozen TV networks, and comic related merchandise is ubiquitous most of the world over. It's also a frequent talking point of the very harassers King is ostensibly speaking against. Comicsgate, like Gamergate before it, seeks to frame the industry as a haven for the straight, white, cis male nerd with nowhere else to go, now besieged by social justice warriors and girls with cooties.
Oh my gosh. Well, at least they're
Wow.
not trying to be unbiased.
Yeah, it's journalism at its finest.
Mm.
Yeah. This
Let
doesn't
me say
qualify
that
as
sentence
journalism.
again. Let me say that sentence again, because man, this is wow. Comicsgate, like Gamergate before it, seeks to frame the industry as a haven for the straight, white, cis male nerd with nowhere else to go. Now besieged by social justice warriors and girls with cooties. Even giving King's intentions the benefit of the doubt.
You know what? Just for a second here, I'm pretty sure those girls did have cooties.
I think that's what Richard Meyer was trying to tell us.
Yeah.
About Heather Andrews.
It's spread through the blue hair dye.
Oh no! No! What have you done, Professor Geek? That's coded language. That was a dog whistle. Did you hear it? Oh wow, it worked. A dog came. Even giving King's intentions the benefit of the doubt, his politically neutral language. This is what I've been saying. Unless you're making to these progressives and these hard leftists, unless you're making a daily profession of Marxist and progressive faith, they understand that you're against them. Even giving King's intention the benefit of the doubt, his politically neutral language still reads like one of those doormats that says, welcome, no matter what.
Wow.
You're not unhinged enough to be one of us.
Yeah. Mm.
If you do not drip with hate, you may not join our club. Not ours, theirs. I'm speaking as one of them. Wow. Jeez.
It's very much like the academic world too. I see so many parallels. I remember another academic, a fellow professor, was finding out, that was interested in heroes and archetypes and stuff. And we were talking about Wonder Woman. I think the conversation strayed to, and she said something about, well, yes, and of course, Linda Carter's unfortunate costume. Yes, just expecting me to agree with that. Oh, that was very objectifying. And I wanted to say that's an amazing costume. It's loaded with symbolism. It's wonderful, but you're not allowed to do that because you're in this setting and you're supposed to be one of us. So that, yeah.
Okay, so
what did you say?
this line is taken from somebody's. Do you know who Jen Bartel is?
No idea.
She's some
a purple-faced, blue-haired, three-eyed woman.
Yeah.
Oh, lesbian too.
Yeah.
Just throw it in there. Throw it in the mix. There you go.
Yeah. It says, welcome no matter what side you're standing on, as succinctly worded by fellow creator Jen Bartel. Yes, superhero Comics have a fundamental connection to the immigrant experience. What?
What?
What is this? So much word salad. Okay, yes, superhero comics have a fundamental connection to the immigrant experience and have been punching Nazis since the 40s. But the specific problem today is that marginalized creators can't create without placing themselves at risk for targeted harassment. I'm just thinking about like all the people who have been like overtly criticized, right? Overtly criticized. Usually they say stuff like Gabby Rivera from America Chavez, and she would tweet like this insane stuff about getting in people's faces and starting confrontations, or stuff like Magdalene Visaggio, who called for like violence, like
Yeah,
a bat to
baseball
the
bat.
teeth, a
Yeah.
bat to the,
Oh
and,
yeah. Yeah.
and would talk about socialism and all this wackadoodle stuff. This stuff, nobody that I'm aware of has ever been criticized in a vacuum, right? It's
Mhm.
either been from some like social communication, or it's been just from like a horribly bad book. I mean, just insanely bad writing.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing is if these guys bothered to go watch Richard's videos, I haven't watched all of Richard's videos, but I've seen him praise the very people that he'll bash when they do a bad job. He will praise them when they do a good job. He's not,
Absolutely. Yeah, he will.
yeah. So all they focus on is the criticism and they call it harassment,
Mhm.
which again, it is not.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, you were critical of me against you. Absolutely. He even what was he? I think he was reviewing a Gail Simone comic book the other day, and he can pile on her pretty well, but he stops occasionally. He says, "The tragedy of this is that she is such a great writer. She's capable of it, but
Yeah.
we continue to get." So he's very fair, and he's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he just did a X-Men Red video criticizing Tom Taylor, and then halfway through it, he's just saying how great these section of like 3 or 4 pages was, and then he went back to criticizing it because then it got stupid again.
Yep.
He's very honest with his praise and his criticism. So they just can't. That's what they can't take. They can't take honesty. They want their T-ball trophy for losing.
Yep.
Sometimes I think these people are pathologically literal. Okay, of course, before King even tweeted his statement, Taylor's seemingly less ambiguous condemnation was co opted by Comicsgate anyway. Dozens of Comicsgate accounts tweeted the same phrases as Taylor, with the added, "We are Comicsgate, and this is what we believe." Troll movements see no cognitive dissonance in claiming to stand against transphobia while idolizing. Oh, people mock Richard every day. Like, I like Richard, but sometimes he's a little goofy too. Like, he
Oh
eats
yeah.
like a child. He eats like a child, and like his movie taste is horrible. People like him though. People like him though because he's charming and funny and goofy. This is not idolizing. It's
Yeah.
just he's got a charisma, and people like his storytelling. But part
Yeah.
of the reason they like his storytelling is because he's your goofy comics uncle.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Nobody idolizes Richard.
Dozens of Comicsgate accounts tweeted the same phrases as Taylor with the added "we are okay" to stand against while idolizing a figurehead who constantly misgenders the trans creators he dislikes.
Well, what I
Comics,
find interesting about sorry, I just wanted to point this out. They're
Yeah.
they're trying to accuse us of that zombie-like idolization mentality for sending out the same tweets right after it just talked about all of the comics are for everyone tweets that went out in incredible, format fashion. So
Yep. Well, they have no sense of hypocrisy. They're incapable of seeing it when they do it all the time.
didn't mean to interrupt there though, Edwin. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Comicsgate will always excuse the most extreme actions of its adherents as outliers among a well-intentioned group.
I want to get these chips.
So even our extremists are well-intentioned. Sometimes they're kind of spicy, but they're still well intentioned, which is why even the best worded tweets will never sufficiently address the harassment perpetuated by hateful individuals with too much time on their hands. Got too much
Much time on our hands.
hands.
Take it away from me. All right.
There was no simple or straightforward way to fix or defeat Comics Gate.
There is no way to
There
defeat
is no way.
Comics
There
Gate.
is no way because we're gonna win.
We're
gonna win. We got so many beautiful people. They are so creative, right? They're so determined. They've got so much enthusiasm and joy. They can't beat us. Can't be done.
It's
Gamergate-
fertile ground. It's a fertile environment to create in. You see so many people popping up, and you can't do that in the SJW comics world. You have to toe the line. You have to be, rank and file. You can't really be creative and expressive.
That's why it's driving them nuts, because they're losing their control on the narrative.
Oh.
Not so much the narrative. Sorry, let me take that back. Hopefully they're losing control of the narrative, and we're taking it back because there's enough of us out there behaving like normal, rational human beings, having decent conversations with people who we're supposed to hate. But also, they're losing control of the medium. And even if it's only a little bit, $1.6 million compared to the industry is a little tiny thing. But it's the crack in the door. And it's the possibility of us creating a new market that has them freaked out because they own it. Right now they own it, and they're happy to own it. And it took them a while to get to own it, and now they have it. But we're like the guys that jumped off the sinking ship, and we're in the little, lifeboat, and we're going over that beautiful little island over there, and we're going to create a whole new civilization. And they hate it.
They spent so much time trying to own the market, and now we're just moving the market.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's driving
They
them crazy.
hate it. They hate it. Let them hate it. Go on, Edwin.
All right, let's get back in here. All right. There is no simple or straightforward way to fix or defeat Comicsgate. Gamergate has been around longer, and while it generates fewer headlines, its effects are still very much felt around the gaming industry. In all likelihood, Comicsgate is a Pandora's box that can't be shut again. Now that opportunists have discovered that there's money to be made in weaponizing bigotry in comics, they and others like them will ride the hate wave as far as it will take them. At the very least, prominent creators like Taylor, Lemire, Sienkiewicz, King, and their many peers who still remain silent should continue to speak up and to actively listen and process feedback from marginalized community members when their words fall short of acknowledging the actual problem.
Please, please, please listen. If they listened, they would change their minds.
I hope more pros at Marvel speak out so we can hasten the demise of Marvel. Because everybody, and hopefully everybody in the chat understands, every writer, every editor at Marvel has naked and open contempt and hatred for you. Wants you to shut up, wants to castigate you, but still wants your money. Why are you giving them your money?
Yeah, it's true. The idea here too, it sparked it from a couple of things you just read there, is the idea that they don't take the time to listen and talk to the comics gators. I was talking to somebody just the other day who owns a comic book shop, and he didn't really know me very well, didn't know any of the things I'm about or whatever. And he just said, "Did you hear about Ethan Van Sciver? Oh, it's just, he's actually a Nazi. He's an alt-writer, and I had to take all of his art down in my shop." And I started questioning. I tried to say, well, what makes you think that? Well, he did a sketchbook, and it was called, My Struggle, and he had, and I thought, well, Sinestro's a bad guy, but he wouldn't hear it. And I eventually said, listen to one of his videos. Just listen to one of his videos. He never spews hate. And no, I won't do that because I don't even want to associate with that. You've already made up your
Yeah.
mind because X, Y, and Z people, have said that think this, be against this person, and it's just there's no reasoning, there's no logic.
That's exactly why I think it is so desperately important that we control that narrative and we get that story out before it seeps into the greater public. It's
Mhm.
hard to shut down a lie once it's made its way around the world.
Well, the interesting thing
Yeah.
though is Comicsgate seems to from looking at like all the participation on YouTube, participation on Twitter and Facebook, in the frequency. I think we're growing, man. I think we're absolutely growing.
They level as the more faster the faster will grow.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Beyond the equivalent of thoughts and prayers on Twitter, the most powerful members of the comics industry and community need to pay attention to who's being harassed, even when it's not someone one step removed from Marvel or DC Comics. What does that mean? Needs to, okay. Comicsgate has so far only seen significant backlash when they've gone after well connected white women in the industry. Will A-list creators speak up for the self-published black women who routinely get targeted? Who? Who's this?
Yeah. What
Who are
are
they talking about?
who?
Evidence of the targeting, please. Yeah, you're right.
Self-published? Who?
Self-published black women?
Yeah.
I don't know about self-published. Could it be talking about the new author on Riri Williams?
Oh. Yeah. Maybe her.
Maybe.
But she hasn't published. She's never self-published a comic book.
No,
No,
she's a poet.
Yeah.
And yes, I do
yeah,
say that with
yeah.
disdain. Someone asked me. Yeah. You know what? Hire a science fiction writer or an action, a freaking screenwriter or something.
Yeah.
A poet?
Who's a self-published black woman though who's criticism?
I don't know.
Because this would
I'm sure it's probably the poet because nobody publishes poetry, so she's probably self-published her poetry
Oh, maybe.
because it's freaking poetry.
All right.
Images by Tyrone Green.
Or the trans indie cartoonist. Who's a trans indie
cartoonist?
All right, so the only trans people that I'm aware of that have gotten any criticism are Tamara Bonvillain, right?
Mags
and Michelle Perez.
Mags, yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, Michelle Perez.
I'm trying to think of any other trans comic creator that has gotten any criticism.
And it wouldn't be
know.
indie.
And
it
none
would,
of the.
It would only be Marvel and DC.
Tamara's a colorist, but it says a cartoonist. Who is a trans?
I think they're just making crap up.
I don't know who they're talking about.
No, me either.
I wonder. I wonder if somebody said something to somebody once, and they're like, "Oh my god." Yeah, I have no idea who these people are though. Whose Twitter notifications are made a daily hell by Comicsgate followers. You can mute the entire word if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And strip that completely out of your feed if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
If comics are truly for everyone, then a direct relationship with Marvel Comics shouldn't be a prerequisite for support when a hate group harasses you. Well-intentioned tweets are a great start, but now it's time for the most visible and secure voices in the industry to begin the hard work of listening to and uplifting those of us at most at risk. Us. Comicsgate probably isn't going away anytime soon, but consistent, unambiguous, and thoughtful support from those in positions of power will go a long way towards minimizing the harm internet bigots can enact on the comic community's most vulnerable members. And in fact, I think people from DC and Marvel, particularly high leadership, should say more wackadoodle stuff because it will speed up the correction that has to come. Because some of these people,
Yeah.
half of Marvel needs to be fired. I think there should absolutely be all kinds of crazy voices at Marvel and stuff, but half of them should be fired.
Yeah. It
My
needs an
wife-
overhaul, definitely.
Oh, my wife says, "Am I the only one getting the humor of Bond villain's name?" No, everybody laughs at that. Her nickname is Bond villain sometimes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We'll go to good low life.
Yeah, good low life.
That
Yeah.
That's totally gonna make its way into somebody's comic book at some point.
And it'll be harassment.
And
Oh,
who
yes,
is this
yes.
writer? Who is this writer? It says by Paste Comics editorial. I've never heard of these people before.
No,
Yeah, me neither.
and I'll never hear from them again.
Yeah. What word salad though? Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's like that's just
It's almost
that's
it's
just
almost
bad.
like they tried to put in all the appropriate search terms so that people in the SGW community would seek them out and recognize them as one of their own.
Unbelievable.
Wife Chad is saying we all get the joke, Mrs. Boyette. It's Jennifer de Guzman. Oh, which one is Jennifer de
That sounds
Guzman?
familiar.
Is she the one that was complaining to the widow of Darlin Cook, saying, I understand that you're getting criticized, but my problems are more important right now because they're trans problems.
Oh,
I have no idea.
Chester Busby is asking me if I'm ready. Are we ready?
for the call out. Nice.
All right, Mike, do you need to turn anything down?
I always do.
Okay. All right. If you're listening at home and if this is your first time here, I am not even kidding. You need to turn your volume down. You need to take your headphones out. This will blow your speakers if you leave them all the way up. I'll give you a 5-second warning. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lone Star Squadron! Ho!
How did that come about? When was the first time that you did that? I want to know the origin story of the call out.
I don't even remember. I think somebody just said Lone Star Squadron Ho in the chat, and Edwin yelled it.
Nice.
Yeah, and then it just kind of became one of our traditions.
Edwin's voice can make anything, and he could read a phone book on a live stream, and I would tune in and super
Yeah,
chat.
he did that last Tuesday. 10,000 views. It was fantastic.
Absolutely.
Everyone was like, I want to hear him read my name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, is there any way we can correlate this ridiculous, ridiculous story back into the topic of the day?
The feminine and the masculine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm trying to think of a good segue.
That seemed like a complete lack of masculinity. That seems to be the problem. It seems like everybody has.
Yeah,
Yes.
it read like it was written by Will Wheaton.
It's this deformed. Not deformed is not the right word, but it's this warped femininity that has been falsely valued, right?
Hmm.
And I think maybe this is the problem. It's this overvaluation of a warped and damaged form of femininity or feminism or the female aspect that has been overvalued. And you tell us, Professor Geek.
No, and I think that goes hand in hand with an overly warped condemnation of masculinity. You know, actual masculinity is often being called toxic masculinity, and that's not the case. It's just simply, you know, there's nothing wrong with assertiveness. There's nothing wrong with you know, basic masculine traits. You need both of those forces in the world. We certainly need both of those forces in stories. But this idea is it's almost like a science fiction movie. Just this attempt to drain the differences away and just make it all generic, make it all a one, you know, sort of Brave New World type of concept or whatever with no, yeah.
Oh, Brave New World.
It's interesting in stories because, you know, the male hero's journey is about the hero going out into an unknown and having this journey, extending himself and then being changed because of it and bringing back some sort of help, you know, and that's the basic hero journey. The basic female hero's journey is about taming the beast, taming the unknown. And then that can play out in different contexts. It doesn't always have to be, you know, in a romantic situation or whatever, but
yeah, you said that in the Beauty and the Beast.
yeah. And the idea there, but if you take that away, then you're not teaching boys and girls or even men and women, you're not giving them that context of how to deal with themselves in the world and their forces and their own masculine or feminine traits. Even across the board. I mean, there are feminine traits in men and masculine traits in women too. If it's not just about, you know, it's just which one's more predominant. That's the idea there. But again, opening the can of worms, not sure how much I want to dig out and put on the plate.
Oh man, we're, you know, throw it all out there.
Edwin looked pensive there. Were you going to say something?
No, I was thinking. I was thinking about heroic archetypes, and I was thinking about David from the Bible.
Oh yeah,
right. And so you have the youth, and when when he's the youth, he's almost the trickster hero, right?
Yeah.
And then he becomes David the warrior,
and
then he
the
becomes
war hero. Yeah.
Then he becomes David the king, and then he becomes David the pensive in the celebratory, and you know, he writes all these psalms, and then he becomes, you know, he becomes this elder figure, and then passes on. There's this transmission to Solomon, but he goes through this journey, and each step on the journey is like this very strong archetype, and embraces like these different archetypes, right?
Yeah. And so that's a great. Oh, I'm sorry. Finished. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just in one person, you have all these different, very strong, like ultimate versions of these archetypes.
Yeah, and that's what Joseph Campbell would call the pedagogical function of an epic hero, showing us, you know, us individuals reading or listening to the stories and everything, showing us how we can interact with the different stages of life. So, as you said, David is a young trickster, you know, fighting Goliath with different means, blurring the boundaries between what's an effective tool of war, you know, using the slingshot and so forth. And that's you know, you do what you need to when you're a child and you don't have the adult strength, and you rely on what you need to. And then, as you said, becoming a warrior, becoming that war hero, that's all about protecting boundaries and protecting the values and the ways of your kingdom and of your culture and so forth, and moving into king, moving into to poet in the end. Sorry, Mike. But, yeah, that pedagogical function is very crucial to epic heroes. But if you remove their basic masculine or feminine roadmaps, then you take away their effectiveness for a pedagogical function. Now they're just sort of floundering, and they're just sort of being, because if they're the same as each other, then they're also the same as themselves 20 years earlier. And we see that a lot, you know, that they take a masculinity out of a man, and they become the real man baby, you know.
And there's a key there for you, because you're told that David was a man after God's heart.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And well, the second part to that is because he would do, you know, he would do God's will. Yeah.
I also thought when you first mentioned David, and we were talking about perceptions of masculinity and everything, I always think about David and Jonathan. and their wonderful friendship that they had. Jonathan was the son of King Saul,
Yeah.
and by all rights, he could have very easily demanded that he receive the throne. He was the son of the king, but he knew that God's anointed was now David, so he passed that over and was a dear friend to David. And it just boggles my mind how many people, usually of an SJW agenda and persuasion, want to argue that clearly they had some sort of homosexual relationship. Clearly, that's what was going on there. So two men can't be dear friends. They can't be, that's a perversion of. I mean, you can have dear masculine friendships, dear intellectually intimate friendships.
They fought together too. Okay, and I understand this as a soldier. I've been out of the Army now for 18 years. I still keep track of at least 3/4 of my friends. We talk frequently. When somebody has a crisis, we help each other out, But there's a bond. There's a bond when when you go to war with other men, when you fight with other men, and David and Jonathan shared this bond.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you're trusting each other with your lives, your very beings, your identities, at every level. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have that experience, but that makes perfect sense. What branch of the military were you in? I'm sure viewers know this.
I was in the Army, and then in the Army I was an infantryman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Blood brothers.
Yeah.
The medal says, "I have a few myself."
Yeah. And Sketch would understand this too.
It's shocking how many comic skaters, especially big personalities or whatever within the movement, are actually ex-military and or veterans or whatever. So I don't know. That might be saying something as well. And you don't really see that too often in the SJW crowds.
No. The Army beats it out of them.
Because we got Richard, John Malin. I remember he was saying it. Edwin and a lot of people.
Cummings.
Captain Cummings.
Cummings, I think, has now completely Sketch Therapy. We were talking about the number of veterans. We were talking about the example of the friendship between David and Jonathan. And David said he loved Jonathan more than he could love, like the love of a woman. He loved David so much. And we were talking about how SJWs can kind of twist this relationship to mean something else. And I was explaining that when you're connected to your fellow soldiers, sometimes it's a very deep love just because of fighting together, what you go through. Yeah.
And we see this elsewhere. It's an archetypal thing, the friendship between soldiers. Achilles and Ajax, for example, in the Trojan War. I mean, Ajax was willing to kill himself because he didn't receive the honor of I think it was dealing with Achilles' body or something like that. So yeah, it's common. And you would often hear the SJW crowds say, well, that's toxic masculinity, not allowing men to be friends and explore their emotions or whatever. And yet they're basically doing the same thing. Anytime two men or two figures or in a story or whatever happen to be very close, I wonder if they're homosexual. Is that something we can, weave into our, aren't you doing the same thing?
Well, like I said, they don't know what hypocrisy is, even though they're the world's best practitioners of it. Cummings is MIA. Yes, he is.
That's sad.
Well, no. Actually, I think he's taking some classes and such. And I think he's just taking a little bit of time away from all this. Yeah.
There's a super chat for you there, Edwin.
Let's see, $5 from Alex G. Thank you very much, Alex. Edwin is a former non-commissioned officer. Do you still mentor young men? As a civvy, I can't help but try to show them the way. Hooah! Yeah, as I can. And I work for a demolition company, and I've got a couple of sort of semi-adopted Samoan sons who are under my wing.
Nice.
Hey, read Liam's chat too.
Liam, at Blacklist Universe, this is a topic I'm very passionate about. They do not understand friendship. Yeah, I would get that. I would get it. Sometimes when they all just seem to be about activity partners, but I just see people kind of reeing about stuff and sharing their mutual, these degenerate hobbies and so forth.
How much how much trust and friendship can you have with somebody who you know will completely betray you and burn you at the stake for voting a certain way, or for saying a certain watchword online? You know.
Yeah, it's bizarre stuff.
It is. I mean, these people will nuke their own freaking family relationships
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that.
over political disagreements. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's no agreeing to disagree anymore. There's no keeping an open mind. It's a prescription now. It's just the good guys versus the bad. It's the false binary. It's the very thing that in academic circles people always try and tell people to look out for. Don't just reduce a situation or an issue to this side versus this side. Chances are there are multiple different shades, you know, and there are places to explore. But you see that from the SJW crowd. Nope, you are with us, the good guys. It's actually funny. This, maybe it's a little tangent, but I remember when the last film in the prequel of the Star Wars movies came out. Forgot the name of that one, but when Anakin goes full Darth Vader, and there's a scene in that, I think the meme was going around with it recently, but when he tells Obi-Wan, he says, you know, you're either for me or against me. And I remember everybody was just so excited when that came out, because that was a line inserted that was supposed to be, or the SGW crowd thought that mentality was so ridiculous and how dare them. But now you're seeing that reflected in the SJW causes online. You're either for us and you want to punch Nazis, or you're against us and you are a Nazi. And we're seeing it completely reversed. So like there's no integrity of a viewpoint. It's just whatever works for us in the moment. And it's and people are using that even moment from Star Wars now to defend themselves. I'm thinking, do you guys have a cultural memory? Can you remember?
There seems to be this recurring theme of hypocrisy when we're talking about these people.
I keep bringing it up, and you keep labeling it that nicely.
Conrad Jashke, Mike, this is a great talk. You need more subs. I've been in and out of this conversation, but what I've heard has been awesome. Yeah, I really I like Michael's presence here. I think we'll bring you back on regularly if you like. And
you? Well, that's great. Thanks.
Well, hopefully he's talking about all of us.
Yeah, exactly. We could all use more subs.
I think you fit in. I need more subs than you do, man. You've got 5,000. I only got like 2,000, so I need some of your.
I just tweeted out. I tweeted everybody, tell them to go follow you, so we'll get that done.
Right on. Yeah, we need to really like cross-pollinate in this space and bring in people who don't know about the entirety of the Comicsgate movement, and just bring them in from outside of comics, where they're not going to hear all of this bullcrap coming from Pulse, whatever the hell the name of that site was, or any of these other, Tom Taylor's or anything else. Man, I can't even talk to Tom about this stuff. That's not going to happen.
I think it's funny that website was called Paste when pretty much the entirety of the content was copy and pasted from SJW Twitter.
How apropos.
Yeah, but they seem to think that they're going to be able to stop Comicsgate. The problem is the way they resist. The more that they allow this shrieking, irrational behavior to prevail, the more normal people they will drive to us. But we do have to place out a welcome mat or a signal for people of goodwill, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing when we fight. Make sure you're fighting a good fight, right? And make sure that you're being a good emissary and a good representative, so that we have a community that people want to be a part of.
Yes.
Be the best version.
Yeah, I think
you don't want to look like. Go ahead. I was going to say, you don't want to look like those SJW tweets that are, this is our side, and those evil bleepity 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 Comicsgaters. Yeah, you want to conduct yourself a little better than that.
Yeah, no, I saw some good movement, I think, today on Twitter. No names in particular, but just I saw, a lot of people that were taking the time to talk people through without getting angry, or without insulting or anything like that, and just making the calm, rational argument that the other side doesn't have an argument. And I think if as a collective, I hate to use that word, as a body of people, if we all approach it that way, every time it is brought up, we're gonna win one person at a time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When people on one side consistently commits that ad hominem fallacy of attacking the argument or attacking the one making the argument rather than the argument, people eventually take notice of that. You know. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, got to put our best foot forward. Although I did spend my entire day arguing with the one twit.
Do as we say, not as we do.
Well, no. I wasn't. Here's the thing: is that he was acting as if he was this business guru and trying to convince me that I was a failure for my $78,000 Indiegogo, and how
Oh
it's
my gosh.
such an insignificant Pyrrhic victory. He didn't use that word, but that's what he probably should have said if he was smarter. And he was like, trying to say how this is an unsustainable business model. To it, I responded, Brian Polito's done this for years, but it's like, oh, but tell me when you've done better than the image founders, and I'm like, I'm doing better than Eric Larson. And then he got into this all day long argument about how I sold less individual issues than Eric Larson did this month. And I'm like, Eric's book lost money. After paying for everything, I will be coming home with like 60 grand. Right?
Nice.
I'm like, it doesn't, any way you slice it, I beat Eric. And this was the measurement you put up. And he's like, well, he sold more individual issues. And then he wanted to create this ridiculous thing where if I sold 2 issues to one person, it only counted as one sale. Whereas all of Eric's sales, even if somebody bought multiple issues or they just sat on the shelf and not selling, were counted as individual sales. And I'm like,
Wow.
you're so full of crap. And
That's
then
desperation.
yeah, towards the end of the night, it devolved into him insulting me, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so you're a hypocrite too. All right.
Yep.
What are you gonna do with these people? Sometimes it's fun to just play with them.
I never engage myself. I mean, for discussions or debates, that's great, but yeah, I don't have the emotional energy or the mental, time. I have other things to dedicate my intellectual space to.
Oh, I do too. I just don't have the what do you call it? I'm just not that centered.
The impulse. You never found a fight that you were willing to. That looks like a good fight. Let me get in there.
Yeah, I have too much fun doing that, so I'm trying to stop. That's why I mute so many people. And that was the funniest thing today. It was like there was all these arguments going on, but all I could see was one side of the argument, because I think I pretty much muted them all, which means there's not that many of them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's the same people pitching the same fits every day, and I think I've muted them pretty much 95% of them. So, but we're growing. There's more of us. I'm seeing new faces on Twitter every day taking our side, but it's still that same little cabal of nobodies that are muted.
There was a funny thing that happened today. You've heard of CBR, yeah? Comic Book Resources?
Yeah.
And they tweeted out something quoting Lemire or something. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. Is this the one? I wonder if they blocked me. Let's see. They tweeted them, and then I went and I put a post on there, and more people from Comicsgate came and liked my post than liked the post by CBR. Like the post being critical of their nonsense. I'm looking for it. Yeah, it's y'all show it. It's so funny. And I appreciate everybody who helps signal boost or share stuff with me on Twitter. I love it. It's awesome.
Don't you know that that's harassment? You're harassing me.
All right, can you see what I'm looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me lock it on you.
All right, so CBR straight up just wrote a story about this, just sharing it out, right? And you see that there's 15 comments, right?
Mm-hmm.
15 comments, 11 retweets, and 30 likes, right? You got them? All right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hang on, I'm such a boomer. Scrolling down. And so here's my post right here, and I got 5 comments, 7 retweets, and I got 66 likes. So my comment on their post got more support. It's amazing.
That's funny.
And I said, CBR, would you like to present the opposing view or just rubber stamping the condescension of helpful white man Jeff Lemire? It's beyond disgusting that you have tokenized and reduced people, given the immense diversity of the creators and fans in Comicsgate.
Mm.
And there,
That's
there
well put.
is.
That's really nice.
If you stop and if you take some time and you get to meet people, Comicsgate is immensely diverse, immensely talented too. Like just the amount of talent, not just in the traditional creators, but like these people who want to be. Wow, they doubled down on this mess. CBR is running this narrative hard, Mike.
Yeah, well, they're run by the enemy.
Brian Cronin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is an older article, but they retweeted it today. Interesting.
Of course they do.
They're just running it. Wow. It looks like all these articles take the same template.
Yeah, the same links in there, the same tweets. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. A lot of that seemed coordinated. Mm. Oh, what page you working on, Mr. Miller?
I'm working on page 32, and this is a page I am not going to show anyone.
Uh-oh.
A hidden page.
I think
Special surprise.
Edwin, I think you probably remember what happens on this page.
Oh, okay.
The first surprise.
The first kind of payoff there. Yeah, and so in case you guys don't know it, there are some there's probably 3 really good payoffs. In payoff, what I mean is this is by like some things that you might not expect. So you're going to get to it, and you're like, oh, that's cool. These little plot twists. Yeah. I'm not going to tell you what they are. Yeah, no spoiler alert.
No.
I'm not going to spoil anything.
And no one is allowed to spoil them out loud. This has got to be like M. Night Shyamalan on the Sixth Sense, where everybody knows what happens, but nobody says it out loud.
Nice.
All right. No saying you see dead people.
Thanos demands your silence.
And yeah, so I think if this works out right the way I paste this, there might be one such event in each issue.
Oh, cool.
So-
That's really great pacing. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. So now how many issues is this a graphic trade? How many issues is the trade?
It's 3 48-page issues, so it'll be 144 pages unless I do some extra added stuff for the trade, which in all likelihood I will.
Okay, cool.
Let's see. Nasser says, did you see my messages earlier? In 3 days, according to Indicron, Comicsgate made 50,000. That's pretty good from the relatively small pool of people that we're tracking now.
Met you yet, but I really am looking forward to your work.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Miller, I am going to have to sign off here pretty shortly.
Yeah,
I've got
we are over an hour and a half. This Aloha hour and a half must come to an end. It's been great, Michael. Thank you for being here. Somehow or
Thank you
another.
so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll have to. I don't know. You don't do these on your channel, do you?
I do live streams on my channel. Yeah, you're welcome to come on
Oh,
anytime. You as well, Edwin. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Just hit us up whenever is good. That's the best way to cross pollinate. So everybody, Professor Geek, if you haven't already, please run over there and bump up his subs if you're not already subbed to him. And also Edwin Boyette. I'm sure everyone's already signed up to Edwin, but if there's anybody new, then please hit my sub button there as well. And then also go to LoneStarComic.com. The store is still open. And yes, someone was asking in the chat if I made a decision on the third cover. I'm not sure when I'm gonna do it. I thought Ethan was gonna launch his new Indiegogo today, so I didn't want to try to do it on the same day. But I haven't heard anything from Ethan about it. So, but I am going to do a third cover tier, and it's going to be the Comicsgate Alliance cover.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. So for those of you who want it, nobody has to buy it. Nobody's being forced to. But I did a poll, and it was like, I don't know, like 200 people answered the poll, and I think only like 12% said no, and everybody else was down for it. So my son's being an idiot. So yeah, look forward to that. Aloha. Michael, do you want to say goodbye, and then we'll have Edwin do his nightly
Yeah,
benediction?
absolutely. Yeah, so thank you guys again for having me. This has been a goal of mine ever since listening to you guys for a while. So
Oh yeah,
I've had I've been a big fan, and I've had a blast. So thank you guys for having me, and thank the chat for welcoming me and everything. And yeah, absolutely, I'd love to have you on whenever your schedule permits. That doesn't interfere with an Aloha hour. Obviously, I'm just still working out my semester schedule, but please do come onto my channel whenever we can schedule it. So
right on, Edwin.
Right. Wherever you are, whoever you are, I believe in your good intentions. I believe in your good heart. And strive to be the best version of yourself that you can be. Try to show the people around you as much care, compassion, kindness, and respect as you can, so that wherever you stand, you make the world a better place. Until we see you again, we wish you a good night and aloha.
Lone Star Squadron, you are dismissed.